Imagine a world on fire, a conflict so vast it engulfed the globe, drawing in nations from every continent. This wasn't just a war, it was the Second World War, a defining moment in human history. But how did such a catastrophe happen? Let's rewind the clock. Our story begins not in 1939, but in 1919, in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, France. The Great War, the war to end all wars, was over. Germany, defeated, was forced to sign a treaty. The Treaty of Versailles imposed crippling reparations, stripped Germany of its territories, and forced it to accept full blame for the war. This created a deep sense of national humiliation and economic desperation. The ground was fertile for extremism. In Italy, Benito Mussolini and his fascist party rose to power, promising to restore Roman glory. In Japan, a militaristic government dreamed of a vast empire in Asia, invading Manchuria in 1931. And in Germany, a charismatic and ruthless leader named Adolf Hitler capitalized on the public's anger. He promised to tear up the Versailles Treaty, restore German pride, and create a powerful new empire. Third Reich. By 1933, Hitler was Chancellor of Germany. He began to secretly rearm the nation, defying the treaty. The world, weary of war and grappling with the Great Depression, watched with unease, but did little. This policy of appeasement was born from a desire to avoid another devastating conflict. In 1936, Hitler sent troops into the Rhineland, a demilitarized zone. No one stopped him. In 1938, he annexed Austria in the Anschluss. The world protested but took no action. Later that year, at the Munich conference, Britain and France agreed to let Hitler take the Sudetenland, a part of Czechoslovakia, in exchange for a promise of peace. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned home declaring peace for our time. But Hitler's ambitions were limitless. In March 1939, he broke his promise and invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia. The policy of appeasement had failed. The line had been drawn. The final trigger came on September 1st, 1939. Germany, having signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union to secure its Eastern Front, unleashed a new form of warfare on Poland to Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Tanks, planes, and infantry moved with terrifying speed and coordination. In response, Britain and France, honoring their pledge to Poland, declared war on Germany. The Second World War had begun. The early years were a whirlwind of Axis victories. Germany's Blitzkrieg strategy proved devastating. Denmark and Norway fell in a matter of weeks. In May 1940, Hitler launched his assault on Western Europe. The Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg were quickly overrun. The German forces bypassed France's heavily fortified Maginot Line, trapping the British and French armies on the beaches of Dunkirk. What followed was a miracle. In a heroic and desperate evacuation, over 300,000 Allied soldiers were rescued by a makeshift fleet of naval vessels, fishing boats, and civilian yachts. While a massive morale boost, it couldn't save France, which surrendered in June 1940. Hitler stood in Paris, the master of continental Europe. Britain, led by the defiant Winston Churchill, now stood alone. Hitler launched the Battle of Britain, an air campaign designed to pave the way for an invasion. For months, the Royal Air Force fought heroically against the German Luftwaffe in the skies over England. Churchill famously said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." The RF held on, and Hitler postponed his invasion plans indefinitely. Britain was safe, for now. But the war was expanding. In the Mediterranean, Italy struggled against the British in North Africa. Germany had to send its desert fox, General Erwin Rommel, to bail them out. In the Balkans, German forces swept through Yugoslavia and Greece. Then, in a move that would prove to be a colossal strategic error, Hitler turned on his supposed ally. On June 22, 1941, he launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. It was the largest military invasion in history. Initially, the Germans made staggering gains. pushing deep into Soviet territory, but they underestimated the vastness of the country, the brutal Russian winter, and the sheer resilience of the Soviet people. The advance stalled just outside Moscow. A brutal war of attrition began on the Eastern Front, a theater of unimaginable scale and savagery. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, another power was making its move. The United States had remained officially neutral, though it supplied Britain and other allies through the Lend-Lease Act. But tensions with Japan were escalating. Japan's imperial ambitions clashed with American interests in the Pacific. On the morning of December 7, 1941, everything changed. Japan launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack was devastating, sinking battleships and killing over 2,400 Americans. The next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared it a date which will live in infamy. The United States officially entered the war. The sleeping giant had awoken, and the conflict was now truly global. With America in the war, the tide slowly began to turn. 1942 was a pivotal year. In the Pacific, the Battle of Midway was a stunning victory for the U.S. Navy, crippling the Japanese fleet and marking a turning point in the Pacific War. On the Eastern Front, the Battle of Stalingrad became a brutal city-block city-block fight. After months of horrific combat, the German Sixth Army was encircled and forced to surrender in early 1943. It was a catastrophic defeat for Hitler and a monumental victory for the Soviet Union. In North Africa, British and American forces, under Generals Montgomery and Eisenhower, defeated Rommel's Afrika Corps in the Battle of El Alamein, and Operation Torch, securing the continent for the Allies. From there, they launched an invasion of Italy in 1943, leading to Mussolini's downfall. The soft underbelly of Europe, as Churchill called it, had been breached. As the military battles raged, another, more sinister war was being waged in secret: the Holocaust. The Nazis' systematic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of 6 million Jews, along with millions of other Roma Slavs, political opponents, and more, was an act of unparalleled barbarity. Concentration and extermination camps like Auschwitz-Birkenau became factories of death. It is a dark stain on human history that must never be forgotten. By 1944, the Allies were preparing for the final push in Europe. The plan was Operation Overlord, the invasion of Normandy. On June 6, 1944, the largest amphibious invasion in history began. Under the command of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, over 150,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy in France. Despite facing fierce German resistance and heavy casualties, especially on Omaha Beach, the Allies established a foothold. The liberation of Europe had begun. Paris was liberated in August 1944. The Allies pushed towards Germany from the west, while the massive Soviet army advanced relentlessly from the east. In a final, desperate gamble, Hitler launched the Battle of the Bulge in the winter of 1944. The Allied lines, though they bent, did not break. As Allied and Soviet forces closed in on Berlin from both sides, the Third Reich crumbled on April 30th, 1945, with Soviet troops just blocks away. Adolf Hitler died by suicide in his bunker. A week later, on May 8th, 1945, Germany officially surrendered. Victory in Europe Day was celebrated across the world. But the war was not over. Japan fought on with fierce determination. The battles in the Pacific, like Iwo Jima and Okinawa, were some of the bloodiest of the war, characterized by fanatical resistance. Faced with the prospect of a costly invasion of the Japanese mainland, the new American president, Harry Truman, made a decision that would change the world forever. He authorized the use of a new, terrifying weapon: the atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, the city of Hiroshima was destroyed by a single bomb. 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. The devastation was absolute. Faced with this unimaginable power and a Soviet invasion of Manchuria, Japan finally surrendered on August 15, 1945. The Second World War was officially over. The war left a world in ruins. Over 70 million people were dead. Cities were flattened, economies shattered, and empires dismantled. But from the ashes, a new world order emerged. The United Nations was formed to prevent future conflicts. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as two superpowers, setting the stage for the decades-long Cold War. World War II was a story of aggression and appeasement, of heroism and horror, of monumental battles, and the quiet suffering of millions. It serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the heights of human courage. Understanding it isn't just about learning history. It's about learning the lessons needed to build a better, more peaceful future. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into history.